to say, we are going to be discussing possibly triggering topics such as suicide and self-harm. So again, if you're triggered by any of this, please reach out to the charity. I think the most important thing here, guys, none of us are medical experts. So this is coming from a place of our truth. So anything we say, please don't think it's necessarily advice, but it's certainly going to be raw and from the heart. Okay, how are we doing? This is great. 4 minutes, brilliant. So we're going to start by introducing you all. So if you could just say who you are, what you do, and how your symptoms manifest. I'm just going to say I'm April. I'm an actor and producer. I co-own Mini Productions with my partner in crime, Sarah, and she's actually going to tell you what my symptoms are.
Yeah, I'm Sarah. I'm a film and TV producer, business partner of April, dear friend of April as well. And I would say that April's symptoms manifest as when she's in a hypomanic state. It's not sleeping much, not eating, being very excitable, making new friends, extremely productive, lots of new ideas, and you know, physically her eyes can go. I can sort of lose her a little bit. And then I would say that the low comes after that. So just sleeping lots and not productive and can't work and lots of anxiety. And I'd describe it as in a bit of a freeze state until she comes back out of it again.
Yeah, wicked. Adam.
Hey everyone, I'm Adam Deacon. I'm a writer, actor, and director. I pretty much had the same kind of symptoms throughout my life. For the last 4 years, I've managed to really be able to control. I feel like I'm being able to control my bipolar and living quite well. But I've had some very extreme symptoms in the past, and I kind of my life kind of turned upside down, if I'm being honest, because of things that happen to do with my bipolar. So that's a short kind of intro into me. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Terri?
Hi, I'm Terri Cheney. Was an entertainment lawyer. I'm recovering from that. I have bipolar 1, and I think I've been bipolar all my life because as a child, I would go through these depressive periods where I couldn't get out of bed, and then I'd sort of, jump back into life and do all this overachieving to make up for the depressive period. So that pattern lasted through my entire life and allowed me to function in a very high stress environment. But I tend to have more depression than mania. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing because mania can be pretty awful, but depression for me mostly shows up as I can't move. I physically can't move. I feel like I just have to use all my willpower just to, move a pencil to a page, for example, or get out of bed. So that's more what I'm used to. And I'm really lucky in the last 10 years or so, I haven't had any episodes and I've just been on this very even keel. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed.
Brilliant. Thank you, Terri. So as you know, this is representation on screen and how those symptoms are presented to us on screen. So we're going to be discussing 3 TV shows and a short film. We're going to be discussing Modern Love, which Terri's going to talk loads about, and I'm so excited because I feel like the publicist for this specific episode.
You are.
Which is brilliant. I won't say much about that because Terri, I'm going to hand it over to you. And we're also going to be discussing Big Mood, which I would describe as a dramedy. It's a UK dramedy about a woman who's around 30 and her best friend, and we see her go with all of her up and downs, but also that show brings in a fantastical element to it where we see those symptoms manifest as like real demons come in. I say demons, they're dressed up as dark children, like just like a dark shadow. very interesting. And then we're also going to be discussing In My Skin, which I will very much hand over to Sarah on this one, which follows a mum that lives with bipolar and her teenage daughter, and how that relationship unfolds. Fantastic show. I actually won the BAFTA a couple of years ago. And then we're going to be just touching on a short film that is one of Sarah and I's short film. It's called Just in Case, which will be made public after this. And it's based on my story and my life. It's set when I was 18, but exploring topics that I've experienced in my late 20s. And it's about me and my dad. Excellent. That's it in a nutshell. So my first question is to all of you, and it's, have you ever seen an accurate representation of yourself on screen? Sarah, should we start with you? A little bit of backstory.
Well, do you want to talk in relation to like In My Skin or that sort of dynamic? Do you mean, or?
Yeah, talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So my mum has bipolar, and I grew up, we didn't realize that it was bipolar for quite a while, but she got very, very ill and was sectioned when I was like 15 for the first time. And then she was sectioned every few years for quite a while. And doing what we do, April and I, and meeting April and talking about what we care about making, I always thought, like, how do I show on screen that relationship and that dynamic? What is that piece of work without it just being a lot of focus of somebody really ill in hospital? And so In My Skin was interesting because whenever I'd watched a piece of work with somebody being like ill or manic, because I think I've seen the real extremities of what mania is, to right up losing your sense of self and even like words, and seeing a lot of ill people in hospital as well when you're being exposed to that. I always watch pieces of work and I thought, like, I just don't believe it, because there's something in it. There's something in someone's eyes and physicality that just changes, that's so hard to act. But I would say that In My Skin was really interesting because it is that mother-daughter relationship. Although the daughter, she's got a really tough sort of home life as well, and her dad's an alcoholic and all that stuff. But the relationship between the mother and daughter, Paul, was quite interesting to see on screen, and I did see some similarities in that caring role and how it shifts. And I think it's a very hard, I don't know what you guys think, I think it's so hard for actors to do, to sort of play being really ill like that, because where do you sit in that? I don't know, I just think it's a very difficult thing to do. So when I watched it, I was always looking at like the actor acting, but I feel like the writing in My Skin and that relationship and the dynamic, there were some moments that felt very real and quite sort of scary and heightened, I guess.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sarah. Adam, I'm going to come on to you, but then I promise I'll mix it up. I'll mix up who gets the first question. But Adam, have you seen any accurate representation? Because, I think it's famously known that the male representation on our screen, and also just in general, that males being public about this condition, there seems to be a lot of shame around that. And they don't necessarily feel comfortable coming out as that. So yeah, what's your thoughts? Because also like all of these shows are based around women as well.
I mean, that's what I was going to basically say, in a sense of, I thought they were both amazing pieces of work in their own way. I just find that, like you said, we don't really have a very strong kind of male perspective of bipolar. And I think we struggle to get them stories out there. What I did like about In My Skin was that I felt like it was very authentic and it was very real. And it wasn't, I find that a lot of the things I've seen with bipolar, it's always quite, I guess, a middle class setup where you've got a lot of access to great support and great psychiatrists and counseling and therapy. But when you're at a different, when you can't afford that, it's kind of like you've got the NHS, that's what you've got. And it can be really difficult, the fact that when you watch these shows, you tend to see that they always see the same psychiatrist for their appointment. That's just not really what I've experienced. I'm always changing the person I see at the NHS. So it was just, I just felt it was quite real, and especially the kind of that look of seeing someone care for their mum like that. But it can be quite scary, but I feel like you've got to show that. I feel like you've got to show that realness sometimes. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Adam. I'm going to segue. This is why I wanted you to be last to answer this question, Terri. So Modern Love, as you know, this particular episode is based on your life or a moment in your life, and Anne Hathaway plays you. When I'm ill and I can't sleep, I tend to just Google bipolar stories, just in the hope to find some comfort, and not read medical pages over and over, just actually read personal stories. And one night in the wee hours, probably gone 3 a.m., Anne Hathaway's photo pops up, and it actually came out the day before, so it was fresh, and I was like, oh, and I watched it, and I sobbed, and I laughed, and I cringed. And for me, that was the first time, and I would say the only time, that I've seen myself on screen. And the way you were talking, Terri, about your symptoms, I think we're very similar in that way. And I watch it time and time again. If I don't feel good, I just put it back on, and it makes me feel less alone. So, Terri, can you tell us how that episode came about, and how you felt when they approached you? And, was there concern that they were not going to do this right?
Definitely. I had written an essay for a column called Modern Love in the New York Times, which is it's wildly popular. And it was a freak of luck that it came out the week before my first book, Manic, came out. So it got a lot of attention. And then it just went away. And 15 years later, I get a call from the New York Times that they are making a TV series based on the Modern Love column, and they wanted to do my episode. And I've had a lot of exposure because of Manic being a New York Times bestseller. So at first I thought, oh, this, just more exposure, like you were saying earlier, April. But it freaked me out a little when I thought about how big TV is as compared to books. Everybody watches TV. And particularly when they told me it was going to be Anne Hathaway, I was thrilled, but I also knew that was going to garner a lot of attention. So I was worried, and they weren't letting the writers of the essays consult on the actual episodes, because they didn't, I don't know, for whatever reason. And I contacted the producer and director and said, this is about mental health. It's got to be accurate. It's so important. So they let me consult on it. And I got to talk to Anne at length, and the director, John Carney, who also wrote the script. So I feel like, was it accurate? It was as accurate as it can be with, I think it was 25 minutes long, and it kind of encapsulated my whole life. So yeah, I think they did a pretty good job. There are some things that bothered me, like the character Lexi that Anne Hathaway plays loses her job, and I'd never lost a job in my life due to bipolar or anything else, and that gave me pause, because I thought it was, stigmatic. But then they worked it out so well in the film that I just decided to go with it. So I've been very happy with the response. It's been really overwhelming, actually.
Yeah, I think Anne Hathaway crushed it, and every time that diner scene just breaks my heart and makes me smile. And I think that's really interesting, because it is 25 minutes, and that's what all of these, well, actually, Just in Case is 15, but the other shows are 30 minutes. And I typically think that's not enough time to really get into the symptoms. But I personally, and I know I'm biased, but Modern Love crushed it. So were you happy with the reaction? Because I mean, I reached out to you straight away.
I was thrilled with the reaction. I mean, I heard from so many people about how they felt, like you said, they were not alone, and particularly in the rapid cycling that was depicted. A lot of people found that very true to themselves, where she's depressed, she's manic at the beginning, super manic, and then goes home and gets depressed, like almost in the same day. And that's what happens with me. And a lot of people don't realize that can happen.
Yeah, rapid cycling for sure is so real. So real. Adam, so thinking about Big Mood as a dramedy, do you think the humor made it more palatable and accessible to those that don't live with bipolar?
I do. I really do, actually. I feel like it would have opened it up to an audience that just don't get to, they hear the word bipolar, but they have no real understanding about it. And I've got to say, I kind of like the fact that it didn't end on a kind of fairy tale ending as well. It was quite real and quite hard hitting, and that is bipolar. It can really affect you. And yeah, I kind of like the fact they didn't kind of wrap it up in cotton wool at the end. So yeah, I thought it was really, I really enjoyed it. I think you can always use comedy to get a point across. I think for me, when I made my movie, film Some Otherhood last year, my character Rico had bipolar, and we done it in a very tongue-in-cheek kind of way. It was a very tongue-in-cheek kind of humor, but I felt like just getting the conversation out to an audience that wouldn't necessarily even, it's just a word to them, bipolar. So yeah, but yeah, Big Mood, I thought it was brilliant. Yeah.
Can I just make a comment on humor? I think people are afraid to laugh when it's bipolar. I get that comment all the time because I have like really a dark sense of humor. And readers always tell me, I'm sorry, but I laughed all the way through your book. They apologize for that, when really it's my favorite compliment.
I feel like, I totally agree. I feel like with bipolar, after a certain amount of time with the condition, you do kind of have to have a sense of humor about it. I feel like you build that up as the years go by, and you kind of laugh about it sometimes, kind of how up and down you can be in one day. And I've got to say, Modern Love, I just want to say congratulations, because I thought it was amazing. Honestly, I feel like it, as a filmmaker myself, it's so hard to kind of capsulate it in a small amount of time, and the fact you could hit so deep and quite hard hitting in 25 minutes, I think that's amazing, and such a great way of art, to paint the picture in the grocery store with the dancing, and just a great artistic way of doing it. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, John Carney is very talented.
You've got another publicist there, Terri. It is interesting with Big Mood. I mean, Sarah and I have never fallen out at all, but I was watching it and seeing this friend just go along with the waves of this lead character. I really admired her, and bless, Sarah does it as well. And some of the situations that she has to pull me from the ledge are brilliant. We always say that I'm Thelma and she's Louise, because I'll end up sleeping with the wrong person and she'll have to shoot her. So
no, but you're right. It is like fight, and like you were just saying, like it is about finding the joy in it. And like in the hypermania and the mania, like you've got to laugh. Like there is a lot of joy and excitement, and I think that you're right, on screen when you see that, it does capture some of that. Like there is a lot of sadness and tragedy, but there is so much comedy and fun in some of that excitement.
Yeah, that leads nicely on.
Sorry. I find just to say, back in, I think 2015, I was sectioned and I was in hospital for quite a few months. And it was such a crazy time in my life. And honestly, when I talked to one of my best friends that really helped me at the time and got me into hospital, and we laugh about it because some of the things I was coming out with, and
Yeah,
it was just, you do end up laughing about that, even though it's such a serious thing, you do.
definitely.
Yeah,
My mum wore all pink once in hospital, head to toe, socks,
yeah,
hat, and we we're like falling about laughing, and it was great.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember, Sarah, when we were shooting Rose and your mum came to visit and she was a little bit hyper and I hadn't been diagnosed long, so no one
You
knew.
hadn't been around somebody that was ill like that, and that was I was like,
No.
oh, like you were uncomfortable, and I was like, feeling really comfortable at this.
I think it's because I was so soon after my diagnosis and there was a bit of shame. I was just scared as well,
Yeah,
even though it was a relief to get that diagnosis. And I remember your mum trying to explain what depression was like. And she was like, it's like a wine bottle and then a frog is coming out at the top of the wine bottle. And I was like, great, that sounds good. And then bless her, from across the room, she was talking to someone else and turned around and went, "You've got bipolar, April." And I was like, "Oh, that's it."
yeah.
I'm out.
I was like, I take no responsibility for what she says.
But your mum has been such a great
Yeah,
support as well.
exactly.
And so yeah, back to you, Sarah. How has this impacted your life? You know, from your mum to me. Did you have to grow up quicker?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think you do. I think it's what I was saying before about that caring role. You do, because you realize it just shifts the sort of parent-child relationship, I think, a little bit. And also, like you were saying as well, Adam, there's no support at all from any of the services really, unless you're in very, very urgent acute care. It really is open to the family. And the last time she was really ill, we actually managed to almost keep her out of hospital the whole time, and we sat in it at home. We were just in it. And so yeah, it does. You have to step away sometimes from work and other things and just be there. But I really believe, and this is, knowing you, April, and everything that I've been through with mum, I think it matures you and shifts your perspective on the world and makes you just really grateful, for all the times that someone's well, and like, so some of the things you've done when you're hypomanic, some of your finest moments, and you've been like, you've created so much, you've written amazing things, you've networked and created things that are so beautiful and brilliant that I say this to my mum, like, I wouldn't change a thing. It's part of the process. It's great.
See, didn't even have to pay her to say that. Great. Just back to you, Adam. So when were you diagnosed, and how long after your diagnosis did you come out, so to speak? And would your diagnosis had happened sooner if you had seen yourself on screen? Because that's how I felt, for sure.
So for me, I was diagnosed in 2015, and this was after being sectioned. And leading up to that, it was just really messy. I had no idea I had bipolar. Looking back, it totally makes sense now. For years prior to that, the things I was doing and how my mind would work, because I'd end up doing a filming job or an acting job, and I'd just come back and I'll just switch my phone off and I'll just turn off, and I couldn't understand it. I wouldn't want to speak to anyone for days, and I just get so depressed. And it started from a really young age. It so I started doing things that were totally out of character. It was all online, it was public, it was on Twitter at the time. I got sectioned, the police were involved. I was arrested for things I was doing. I was just so ill, and I was just so unaware of, to me, bipolar was just a word. Honestly, just people used to joke around and say, "Adam, I think you've got bipolar." And it was just a word I used to hear. And so when I got diagnosed after being sectioned, it made a lot of sense. But then I thought I kind of understood it all then. I thought I had it all worked out and I understood bipolar. And then I heard so much about the highs and lows. When I came out of hospital, I was just feeling low for such a long period of time, and I wasn't feeling any highs. And it made me start to think maybe I haven't actually got bipolar. Maybe they misdiagnosed me and they got it wrong, because I don't seem to have these highs and lows. And then all of a sudden, years later, I stopped taking my medication. This was after I got my life back on track. And I just got really manic again. It came out of nowhere. And it was this kind of high manic level of just craziness in my mind. I ended up getting sectioned again in 2020. And that's when I came out and I realized this is real. Like, you have got bipolar and you've got to take this serious. You've got to make changes in your life. You've got to eat better. You've got to sleep better. You've got to really take this serious. And from that point, I tried to learn everything I could about the condition. If that's when I became an ambassador for Bipolar UK in 2020. And I feel like there's probably so much more I'm going to learn about it as the years go by, but I feel like I've got a better understanding now. If you would have asked, when I came out with having bipolar, it was a really weird situation, because I think looking back, if I had my way and my choice, I probably would have kept it all quiet, because there is a real stigma around bipolar, and I'm still going through that to this day. But my thing, it was all public. It was written in the press. It was online. There were so many articles written about it. I couldn't escape it. So I didn't really have a choice whether it came out public. And just because there was a court case and they printed that I got diagnosed with bipolar in the court case, that so when it went to press and stuff, and then I felt like I had to own it. It was like, right, my narrative has been put out in a way that I had no control over. So now I have to kind of create my own narrative. And I know it sounds a bit corny, but it's that thing of, I really want to inspire, especially young men, to know that you can lose your mind, you can lose it all, you can get really unwell, and you can get well again, and you can build it all up again. And you might get unwell, but just by making small changes, you can have a really successful life. And so I know I'm going on, but it takes me back to one other point I wanted to make. I think everything I've watched with bipolar, what we spoke about, was brilliant. But what I would like to see is just characters in programs that just have bipolar and they're just doing really well. And it's just something that, yes, we touch on it, but it's just a little bit more throwaway kind of thing, so that it becomes
like not like a whole show about it. It's like
yeah.
we show disabilities or like diversity on screen. It just is.
And
it's
so
just
we
like
just
a part
hear
of
the
it.
word more, and
Yeah.
and people start to understand that there's so many people out there living with bipolar. It's really common, and it's not as scary as people think.
Yeah.
Because they see what they see in my skin, and they just get this feeling of just, it's all chaos, it's all craziness, and it's not always like that. Like you said, you can be creative, you can get on with loads of work, you can meet new people. So there can be, there is, if you call it positive, I'm not sure if that's the word, but there is, well, I find there can be positives. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I've struggled with my mental health since 15, but it wasn't until I met Sara that I even really knew the word bipolar. And I think in recent years, what has been the struggle is it is a disability, and I've really fought against certain things, and I just can't do certain things, and that's okay. Terri, I would love for you just briefly to talk about medication, if you don't mind, because Adam touched on NHS, and having moved to the States, it's very different. And I know that it's cheaper for me to fly back to the UK to get my prescription than it would be to get that here.
It is a tragedy here in the United States. I can't tell you how frustrated I am by how expensive my medications are. I mean, it's just, I don't know how people without resources, frankly, get along, because sometimes, you make a choice between food and meds, and that's not right. It's just not right. I believe in medication very strongly. I also believe that you've got to be very, very patient and very proactive with your doctors. In other words, if you're not feeling as well as you think you should, go after your doctors. You know, ask for a change, ask for an adjustment, ask for a different drug. There are so many drugs out there now, and you don't have to suffer. I think people with mental illness, there's this sense that you're not entitled to be happy, you know, that you're just entitled to be stable. And I really feel strongly that you should be living the best life you can live, whether you have bipolar or whatever else you have. But people, there's a concept here in the States called white coat worship, where we're afraid to go after our doctors, you know, we're afraid to push. And with medication, it takes a lot of fine tuning to get it right. I finally am on the right cocktail, and it's a pretty hefty cocktail, I'll admit, but it took years. It just took years of working hand in hand with my doctor. So it's out there. Sometimes, you know, sometimes you hit on the right drug right away, but most of the time you really have to be very aware of your moods and your symptoms and work, like I said, hand in hand. You've got to be your own advocate.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to stick with you, Terri, because even though this is symptoms on screen, I like to think of it just like the entertainment, the arts. And when I was diagnosed, the way that I came out is I actually wrote a letter to my 18-year-old self as a 28-year-old, and it got published in Happiful, the magazine Happiful. And it was received very well, but I actually just found that whole process cathartic. And I think and Adam, you'll be able to relate. And again, Terri, you feel like you were born with it. It was really soothing just to give my inner child, my younger self, some reassurance for healing. So I just want to talk about manic and modern madness, which modern madness, every loved one should read. It's incredible. But what made you want to write about your life? Like, who inspired you to do that?
Well, frankly, it was write or die. At the point that I started writing, I was hospitalized at UCLA for severe depression. And I started writing as part of the art therapy program. I just started writing down my thoughts and my emotions. And I've always written, I've always wanted to be a writer, not a lawyer. So it came easily to me. But I felt like I couldn't lie anymore. I was losing track of my lives. You know, what had I said to whom, and about why I wasn't available, or why I was unreliable, or why I was this way one day and that way the next day. So I belonged to a writing group, and I just kept writing for 7 years and realized I had a book, and it was time for me. I just couldn't go on anymore living the lie. It was time.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Sarah, I'm going to sidestep. You're the most stable person I know, considering what you've gone through even recently this year. And I would like to know, apart from reality TV, what do you do for your self-care so that you can still be an absolute pillar of support for your mum and myself?
Well, I think when somebody's really ill, it's very hard to look after yourself. You're just in a caregiving role. So I think that's like in the emergency state. So I would say that actually it's afterwards when because it is traumatic when someone's really unwell, actually, because they feel so many extreme emotions that you're very connected to them, that actually affects you, I think, in a different way, and you don't really realize until you step away from it. So I think it's like having a space to just analyze and decompress on what you might have seen or experienced, and being able to like share that and get support with other people. I think I really feel like when someone's very, very unwell, you know, you need a network of people around them sort of tag teaming and supporting. And actually that's the journey that we've gone on as a family, is like we kind of pass the baton, you know, because it can be really exhausting. And when someone's in really acute care, I always view like somebody very mentally being unwell is the same as physically in many ways, because they might need somebody there the whole time. You know, you can't just leave someone, and that takes a lot of focus and energy. So I think it's just being able to sort of decompress and reflect on that, and you know, do the things that also help you look after yourself, like eating well and exercising, and being able to talk to friends and loved ones and process some of that trauma that it can bring, so that you are in a place to be able to care for that person well.
Yeah, and just following on with that, and I know that we've spoken, and you, I don't think comfortable is the right word, but you're open to speaking about suicide. You've lost three family members to suicide, and do you think that exploring that specific thing on screen is useful, or do you think it maybe glorifies it?
I think there's a space for it on screen. I think that there's a space for most things on screen, and I think when it's handled respectfully and well, it can be a tool for education or a point of discussion, sometimes in families or with friends. I think there's times when you know, if you watch a piece of work where there may be an attempted suicide, or you see a suicide, it might open up a conversation to someone that you're really worried about and be an access tool. But I think it's a very delicate thing, and it's a very shocking thing, and it's also, I mean, luckily we now live in like Netflix have trigger warnings, but that our content didn't used to have that, and I found it really hard to watch shows about those themes when it wasn't, like, when you weren't given a trigger warning. So it can be quite dangerous as well. And so I know we've spoken, April, about how some shows can slip into you've got to be very careful to not glorify it and not go into a space. It's just delicate. It's a very delicate topic and experience from anyone that it affects, I think.
And just following on from that, I just want to briefly touch on Do This For Me, but I do have another question for you, Adam, so I'll make sure we don't ramble. But we have another short film that is coming out later this year, and it's based around a friendship group and seeing how they deal with a suicide, a friend's suicide after the fact. And at the end, my character does this speech to camera, because this is what the concept is. The funeral is within the next couple of days, and my character is determined to make a video that shares stories and love about this character. But my character Lex, which is absolutely named after Terry's character in Modern Love, kind of has this breakdown and is angry at her friend, and then is angry at herself and guilt, and it really goes like this. And when I first wrote it, Sarah, I'm just going to pass this over to you, but Sarah felt a certain way, and we ended up sitting on opposite sides of my apartment, being very awkward and British, and writing it together, which was tough, wasn't it, Sarah?
It was really hard. I hope I say this correctly, but the first pass of that speech was written from a point of view of somebody who had gone to that place and understood suicidal thoughts. And the character that April had written was a friend. And what I tried to sort of open a discussion with April on was that most of the time the loved ones don't understand, and there's a lot of anger and upset. So to write a speech that came from quite a lot of, well, it's complete understanding, like, I understand why you did it and I understand this, it just didn't feel natural and it didn't feel real. And there was an element of like our duty when we were making this piece of work to really show all sides of like how that might affect loved ones, and to make sure that it didn't go into a space where it was slightly glorifying it and a space of complete understanding, because that can be quite a dangerous space, I think, sometimes if you're making a piece of work. So yeah, we rewrote it. I think I said at one point, like, these are all the things I would say to you.
Yeah, the love you bit. Yeah.
But, you know,
Yeah.
I think I'm really proud of where we got to with it, because I think it came from a place of truth.
Yeah, I agree. So we're dangerously close to the Q&A, but Adam, I want to come back to you because you mentioned about being arrested, and that wasn't something I knew about, and then going to court. One of my biggest pet peeves, especially now we're in our true crime era, you get to this stage, murderers, rapists, anything like that, they get into court and then they're like, oh, they're bipolar, will plead insanity.
Yeah, or just really unwell. They're really mentally ill. It's not even, they don't even specify. They just sort of box people, don't they?
Mm.
Really
And
bad.
I just wondered how that makes you feel, Adam.
I think for me, it's a really strange one, because like I look back to that period of my life and I still have trouble getting my head around it, because the things I was doing was so out of character. It was just things I would never do. So I learned a lot being in court about mental health and the justice system, and that basically it's kind there's this weird cutoff point. It's kind of like if you're gonna plead insanity, then you're really unwell. Like you've got to be really unwell, and there's no chance of you ever getting better. Kind of thing. That's how you are, and it's not going to change. And they think there's not really a system set up for people that got really unwell for a short period of time, and then they're better again. So it's really tricky. But I had my court case, and I felt like the jury really understood the situation of mental health. I feel like they really took the time to understand what was really happening here, and to read between the lines, and to realize that, you know, you can do something out of character. And it might just be a moment. But it's a really weird one. I just have a lot of regret about that time. And I just count my blessings every day that, you know, people understood. They took it really serious, and they understood that I wasn't well at the time. And I think that is one of the main struggles with bipolar. I feel like people get so scared of some of the stuff they see or that might have happened in a manic episode, and they feel like that is that person. And it's not like that at all, you know. Majority of the time you're working, you know, what I try and say all the time is that, like, out of all the years I've been doing my job acting, and I've always been professional. I've always been on time. I've never, I don't think I'm hard to work with or anything like that. But people have a perception because of this thing, bipolar, and they don't understand that, you know, you can go a long period of time being totally fine. And but I don't know if I've kind of strayed off away from your subject, but I just feel like it's tricky with the justice system and mental health. I feel like there has to be so much more understanding. I feel like there's a lot of people locked up that shouldn't really be locked up. They should be getting help. I feel like they need help and they're in the wrong place. So I just think there's got to be so much work done all round to break that stigma.
Definitely. Oh, you're muted, Apes.
Lol. I definitely think the true crime has done us a disservice, especially through the pandemic when it was all coming out. Right, Q&A time. But guys, my final question to you all will be, why is it important to see representation on screen? If you can sum that up in a sentence or two, that would be wicked. So you can get thinking about that. So the first one I'd like to say is, has representation in the media helped you explain your experiences to people in your life? Absolutely. Modern love. Like, it doesn't matter how many articles I put in front of people, I finally had something. And there was kind of like a moment with friends and family that went, oh, that's what that is. Okay, now we know. So Terri, what do you think?
I think nobody knew me before they knew me as bipolar. So yes, coming out about it has been critical to my relationships, all of them, romantic, friendships, work relationships. It's just made the biggest difference imaginable.
Nice. And I'm going to try and get through as many questions. So Adam, I'm going to throw this one your way. So do you feel it's necessary for people who experience bipolar to write and act? Has that actually leads into one of my questions, a different question, but if you can merge them, that'd be great. Because as an actor, and that role that you said that's in your project, were you playing that bipolar character?
Yeah, I was, yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was I feel like I'm quite blessed to be able to put it into an art form. Because, you know, being hospitalized, you realize that there's you know, people that suffer from bipolar and get very unwell. They're from all walks of life. They do all types of jobs. And I feel like I'm in an industry that has that little bit more of an understanding, I think, in media and film and television. I feel like there's just that level of understanding and kind of a level of support in a sense. But not everyone's gets the opportunity to kind of do that. And I just feel like you've got to be really kind of thoughtful for everyone that goes to work. They have to hide it from their, you know, from their bosses, because they just don't want that stigma of people's perceptions of how they are. So yeah.
Yeah. And interesting you touched on work. So I've got a question here that says, how do you cope in work when things are getting worse, such as being on set or in the midst of writing? Do you have someone you speak to or share with? And I mean, Sarah, this affects you as well, because you sometimes have to step away from work and come home or spend 2 hours on the phone to me. So how do you deal with that?
Well, well, I don't know. I mean, I was just going to say that what I've found is with, you know, a lot of people, I found a lot of people that do have mental health issues actually tend to be freelance. Maybe not just in the arts, but find entrepreneurs or freelance or doing their own type of work in their own hours, and that flexibility. And I think sometimes that can be a real blessing but a curse at the same time if there's not structure. But it has this, the world of like having, you know, you're being freelance and doing your own job and sort of being able to move around a bit more, I think has really helped, rather than that classic set rigid way of working. Because I can't imagine what it must have been like, you know, when it was just the same, the jobs were more contained and they were 9 till 5. I think that's so much harder, because certainly for my mum or for you apes, you know, when they're ill, it's like there's not really, there can be loads of work doing through the night or not much work done at all for maybe months at a time if you're sectioned. So I think it's really hard, and it's really, I'm really grateful for a model of working now that can be a bit more flexible.
Yeah, yeah. And Terri, you said over the last 10 years you've been as well as maybe you've been in your entire life. But do you, with your writing, is it now just a standard writer's block, or do you ever trigger yourself when you're in it and then you're like, oh, this is actually really close to home? So yeah, how do you deal with that?
I'm not sure I understand.
Oh, do you, so it says, how do you cope in work when things are getting worse? But I'm aware that that things have been stable for you. So do you ever
Yes.
trigger yourself with your writing?
Well, no, I don't. I find that writing is so therapeutic for me. If I didn't write, I don't know what I would be doing, because when I write about what's happened to me in my life with bipolar, those events don't own me anymore like they used to. I own them. I can shape them. I can remember them with more clarity and not feel the shame and the the stigma that surrounded them at the time. So it's definitely, it's probably my number one coping skill is writing.
Interesting. Okay, wicked. So maybe final one before I ask you guys why it's important to see representation. So someone said, why wasn't Silver Linings Playbook and other representations in film and TV included in the discussion today? Because we only had an hour. That's why. That is why. But do you guys have any other recommendations that we can share with the gang? Terri's nodding.
There's a friend of mine, Lisa Klein, made a film called The S Word that I think is available on YouTube. It's about suicide. It's a documentary. She lost several people as well, Sarah, to suicide. So I highly recommend that on suicide.
Yeah. Adam?
I feel like for me, actually, Stacey's storyline in EastEnders used to help me actually learn quite a bit about bipolar. So I feel like soaps can do a good job, just kind of bringing it when they get the writing, when they get good writers and stuff, they can do a good job in kind of just getting it to people up and down the country, really, in a way that people understand. So I find that Stacey from EastEnders, that character, that helped me.
Nice. Sarah?
Well, I think honestly, again, Modern Love for me was just amazing. But I was just going to make just a quick comment on the films that just in case the film that you wrote, April, because I think that was a really powerful piece for me to watch, because you actually spoke about a lot of the things that I just knew about you and the places you went to, but we never had to say it. And I actually have seen how it's been such a useful tool for discussion with you and your parents, and helping people understand what it feels like to suffer with some of the really dark side of bipolar. So yeah, I'd say that.
I want to second, just in case, because it's a terrific film, and for me it was incredibly hopeful.
Yeah.
The beautiful relationship that occurs in that film, everybody should see that. It's not all despair and darkness. I mean, there can be some incredible moments of light, and you really captured them, April.
Yeah, thank you. I really wanted the piece to be quiet, because as we know, with so much representation of bipolar, it's like big and dramatic, and sometimes it is just a quiet conversation. And I'm really grateful because Terri was the executive producer on that, because I was writing it, Modern Love came out, and then I just had this moment of being like, I'm the only bipolar involved. Am I doing a disservice, or is this right? And in a more crude way, I kind of wanted a little stamp of approval, and I was grateful for you to give me that, Terri. Okay, we've got 3 minutes. 3 minutes. In 1 or 2 sentences, why is it important to see representation on screen? Adam?
I think for better understanding. I just feel like there needs to be more understanding around the condition, and every time we put it out there, more people are going to learn about it, which means it takes away the stigma.
Yeah, right. Terri?
I think it shows you not just that you are not alone, which is so important for us, but you are human. You're part of the human condition. This is one way it expresses itself.
Great. Sarah?
Yeah, I think if it just opens up one discussion with a loved one or close family, like you said, Apes, to say, like, that's me, or that little bit, that's what I'm trying to explain to you. It's that feeling. I think that is just so powerful, can be more powerful than words.
Yeah. And whether we like it or not, film and TV do educate us. as an only child growing up, I kind of relied on it because I didn't have any, like a big sister or brother to tell me what is what in the world. So I agree, it's a huge tool for education. Well, we're coming to an end. I'm really sad because I feel like this could be 3 hours long. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I will feel better about myself moving forward on this day. I always say when Terri and I go for breakfast or lunch, I just leave with a spring in my step. Yes. So I do just want to end then saying that Just In Case is now available for free online. It will be available for 1 week, and then it's going to move over to Shorts TV and then be available on Amazon. Molly, I did it. We managed to get everything in. We've got 1 minute left. 1 minute left. Do you want to say where you guys are on social media so people can find you? Sarah?
Oh, yeah, I'm just Sara_Huxley, and we are mini_prods, although we've been hacked. We got hacked yesterday. April screenshotted me the story and was like, we've been hacked. So if you see a story of mini productions that's got like a cryptocurrency story, just ignore that.
Yeah.
But we do also make films. So yeah, Sara_Huxley, and then we're mini_prods.
On Instagram. So Adam, you're on Twitter and Instagram.
I am, yeah, I'm real Adam Deacon on X or Twitter, and I am deconstructed on Instagram. So check it out.
Nice. Terri, what about you?
I think I'm at T. Cheney author, or maybe it's at Terri Cheney author. I'm sorry.
The popular woman.
And that's sorry about that.
Hello, this is Hello Tech with a reminder for your upcoming appointment.
And we might as well end.
Right on cue. They knew it ended at 11, so they're like, we're going to call her right away. Thank you. I'm April__Kelley on Twitter. I refuse to call it X. And I'm April_Kelley on Instagram. You can also find more of mine and Sarah's work at www.miniproductions.co.uk. We did it. Thank you so much. Enjoy your evening, Sarah.
Thank
and Adam.
you.
Enjoy your day,
so much.
Terri.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Talk soon. Bye.